Hey guys, we're back for another Kaeru Devlog. We didn't post one last Wednesday because we already uploaded a video about the game jam we participated in. Nevertheless, we have returned and we got a lot of spicy content coming your way. Let's get right to it. A good portion of our recent dev work has centered around making the game feel more fun, responsive, and quote-unquote gamey. I've added camera shake and screen freeze as well as damage numbers that are emitted whenever you hit an enemy, though these don't look quite right just yet. This makes the game feel like there's real force behind the hits and things are really happening. We came up with a few ways to limit the player's strength at any given time. Many games have a mana mechanic where you use abilities which use up mana, for example League of Legends. We wanted to come up with something similar but stands out and goes with the theme of the frogs, so we came up with the hydration mechanic. Basically, attacking enemies or using abilities uses hydration points, and when you run out, you're not able to attack anymore or use your abilities, similar to in Dark Souls, where if you attack too many times, you run out of energy. To refill the bar, you have to scurry on down to the water to quote-unquote hydrate the frog so he's able to get back to fighting. Furthermore, we gave abilities a cooldown so that you couldn't spam them endlessly, which would be very broken, especially around the beginning of the game. Now, if you say use your dash, which really does cover a lot of area for our character right now, then you can't spam it to travel across the map just willy-nilly. Both of these would be no fun if there wasn't a progression to them. So, for example, in the beginning of the game, you might not have a lot of hydration, so you might not be able to use that many abilities. And when you do run out, you have to go in the water. Maybe in the beginning of the game, you have to go in the water for a longer time. To make this all very modular, we have two stats. One that's max hydration, and the other is hydration increase. So, or rather, hydration regen. Basically, if you have a lot of hydration regen, the status bar fills up very quickly when you're in the water. And if you have a lot of hydration, you can use more moves without having to go in the water as much. Now, maybe in the future, we could play around with these mechanics for characters that could be more or less dependent on the water, and we're even thinking of adding a pond frog character, whose playstyle revolves all around being in the water as much as possible. So maybe that character has very little hydration and it depletes very quickly. He can't be without it. These and other of the player's stats can be increased not only by items, but by leveling up, which is now a feature in the game. You kill enemies, you get experience points, and you level up based on this. Enemies can also level up to keep pace with the player or even outpace them, because if the player is leveling up and becoming stronger and stronger, it only makes sense that enemies should become stronger too. We're thinking right now that the enemies will increase in strength as you fight more and more waves of them, similar to, say, Call of Duty Zombies, where you fight a wave of enemies and it'll progress to the next wave and more enemies will spawn and maybe some stronger enemies. This will allow the progression of the game environment to be independent from the progression of the player, which means that if you fall behind, you're done, and that adds a layer of challenge to the game. Now this brings me to the event system, which I implemented this week. And though it's not very exciting just yet, it will enable some very interesting possibilities in the future. Essentially, events are like tasks that the player must complete in order to get a reward. The most obvious and straightforward and common example of this that will be in our game is the player will have to complete an event in order to get access to the boss room of that level. So for example, you'll enter the level, and after a few seconds of collecting items and fighting, you'll be prompted to, for example, survive for a minute. Furthermore, we've added another measure of progress in the game, which is money. In the spirit of neoliberalism, money can be used to buy entrances into enemy storage houses, which contain barrels full of goodies, items that the player can increase his stats or gain new abilities from. It's a good way to measure progress, and it adds an incentive so that the player has to defeat enemies in order to get money. Because that's what it's all about. It's all about balancing player choices, giving the player various incentives to complete various tasks, and letting them decide the best way to approach the problem.
Let's talk about the new assets. First, we got a new bridge model which looks pretty cool. It has this little curve upward, which I think gives it more of a Japanese vibe. Now, I'm pretty satisfied with this new bridge, but what I find even more interesting are the storage houses. Not only are they like a pretty cool and interesting detail to add to the overworld, but they also serve a functional purpose. Each of these can actually be opened, and in the future they will contain certain barrels with loot in them. They collect from the insects. For those that don't know, barrels are breakable assets, with special items that buff your character in them. The idea for this system actually came from Risk of Rain 2, where you also have to pay to unlock chests with these special items that buff you. That game is one of our major influences, so we thought it was a good idea to borrow this particular mechanic. Finally, I got to work on the boss arena. That's right, we're in the process of adding bosses to our game. The levels right now work in two phases. You've already seen plenty of the first phase where you fight enemies and collect loot. But in each level there's a boss arena where you could enter, which should be pretty hard to take down without any items. These enemies hopefully will be a lot of fun to take out, but they are about as complex as the playable characters, considering they have the same amount of animations. This particular battleground is meant to be a gaudy entrance room of a rich plantation owner's mansion. We'll talk more about him in the next devlog. An interesting thing about this is that, while the main area is empty, the staircase and columns are important platforms to get more verticality in the level. We also made a collision mesh for the stairs that acts as a ramp so that the player wouldn't have to constantly jump over them. This level is based around a plantation, and it will be divided into multiple sections. First, we're gonna have a dock area, which isn't made yet, but it might have one or two little boats you can hop on. Every level might actually have a dock because we thought it would be cool to have your frog enter an island on a little raft. So then the second section would be a full wheat field. So it may be hard to get the look across, because while we would ideally want the area to be full of wheat, last time we tried to add a lot of assets like that in the game, it got super laggy, especially on weaker computers. We really want this game to not be too demanding on hardware, so it could ideally be played by everyone. I'll raise this question to you guys. Do you know if there's any way we could add something like that while not making the computer crap itself? Anyways, there's one final section we're gonna have, which is the gated area. The player will be able to hop a fence to this last section where there's going to be better storage houses and better loot in general. This is also where the boss arena will be. However, because we don't have a model for the exterior yet, whenever you reach this area, you'll just be teleported. But, obviously in the actual game, there will probably be some sort of event that allows you to enter. even if we don't have all the assets yet. And of course, between these like 3 sections, there is going to be the regular plain foresty area that you've seen before many times in these videos. And scattered about, there's going to be things like the storage houses, as well as a few more things. But we'll keep that secret just for now. Alright, I think that about covers what we wanted to talk about for this devlog. We certainly did a lot. For those that are unaware, we do devlogs every week, so stay tuned for that. I'm pretty sure the next one will focus on our new boss character, which will be fun. Thank you all for watching consistently, and for those new here, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to let us know you enjoy what we do here. We'll see you later.